Okay, this is the video for topic 4.2, where we're going to focus on the causes and the effects of the state-sponsored exploration that took place after 1450. So this is going to be a pretty big topic. It's actually going to be divided into four videos. This video is going to focus on the causes, and then the last three videos are going to take a look at the individual effects in maritime empire building. This follows chapter 4.2, 4.4, and 4.5, but not all of it. So you can kind of follow along with me. And it's important that you kind of take a note on the general developments, not focusing on the specifics. So, what we want to learn through this video is we want to know what the role of nation states was in the expansion of maritime exploration and why they built maritime empires. So, in this first video, we need to focus on an explanation of the rise of nation states in Europe and how this led to maritime exploration. Then, in future videos, we need to kind of really understand that this state sponsored exploration was designed for economic goals, but led to the building of maritime empires in two main waves. So we're focusing on the political theme, and the part that we're focusing on is essentially that states and empires are established, expand, and fall due to internal and external factors. And when we look at this situation, internal and external factors are going to motivate the leaders of European nation states to establish and expand maritime empires. And the reason why, and always the reason for building empires, is economic. These nation states needed wealth in the form of precious metals, gold and silver, to legitimize their rule, consolidate their power, create a market economy, and to make their state powerful among other European states. So, what's going on here is we're going to see the rise of new nation states in Europe, and they're going to have a problem. They have what's known as the gold famine, and they need this gold to be able to do the things they need to do to create a state and later an empire. First of all, they need to legitimize, they need to consolidate, they need to create a market economy to make their people happy. But the new thing is that in Europe, the amount of gold and silver you have is equal to your power. So this statement kind of encompasses this entire video. Let's go into a little bit more detail. After the Black Death, feudalism pretty much comes to an end in Western Europe. And it's going to be replaced with European kings and queens trying to build their nations. Portugal and Spain, located on the Iberian Peninsula, were both new nation states that were established on the Iberian Peninsula after they conquered the Muslims of Al-Andalus. France and England, well, they were existing monarchies, but under feudalism, they were very, very weak. So the leaders of all four of these states were really seeking to build strong independent states with systems that would unify, rule, and provide for their populations. But they had a pretty bad problem. These leaders needed wealth, and wealth during this time period was in the form of gold and silver. Now, gold and silver could be used to create a market economy. A market economy that is based on gold and silver, first of all, it uses currency for exchanges, has value established for key luxury goods and commodities in the amount of gold and silver, and literally makes the people happy because they can buy what they need and want to survive. Plus, the other thing is because they're making money in the form of currency backed in gold and silver, essentially they can pay their taxes. These monarchs also had to legitimize and consolidate their powers. Consolidation focuses on centralization, becoming more powerful. And we know that to do this, these kings needed to create a professional bureaucracy that was highly educated, well trained, and loyal because they are highly paid. They also needed to create a professional military equipped with gunpowder weapons, and they legitimized through art and monumental structures. Here's the problem: all of these things require a lot of gold and silver. Now, the existing pattern of trade, which had reemerged in 1400 after the Black Death, they did not provide these new monarchs with the wealth needed to do this. This was known as the gold famine, the lack of gold and silver needed by European monarchs to legitimize their ruler, consolidate their rule, and create a market economy. Let me explain what's going on here. After 1400, the old pattern of trade returned. Now, the Silk Road is dead, and everything that European wanted in terms of spices, cotton, pepper, and the luxury goods from China had to go through Constantinople. Constantinople is this city right here. In 1453, the Ottoman Empire, remember that land empire, conquered not only North Africa, but also Constantinople. They renamed it Istanbul. Now, what's happening is all of the trade for luxury goods, such as cotton, spices, pepper, and the things from China, have to be filtered through Constantinople, represented by the gold star. But now it's ruled by a Muslim kingdom. And the Ottoman Turks, who renamed Constantinople Istanbul, essentially jacked up the prices. Well, the other arrangement that was in existence that hurt this was that Europeans in Portugal, Spain, France, and Great Britain, they could not go directly to Istanbul and trade. Everything had to be channeled through Istanbul into Italy. And the Italians, who were going through the Renaissance, they didn't want to absorb these higher prices that the Ottomans were essentially charging. So they raised their prices. So by the time it entered into Western Europe, into Portugal, Spain, France, and Britain, essentially what happens is that the prices are very high, and kings, they could not tax the people very high. So what's happening is that all this relationship is collapsing and resulting in the gold famine. Because of the high prices charged by the Italians and the Ottomans, the kings of Europe did not have the gold and silver needed to run their market economy, to make their people happy, and to legitimize and consolidate their power. So, this is a major problem for these kings. If they did not solve it, these new fledgling nation states of Portugal, Spain, France, and England would probably collapse back into feudalism. So they came up with a solution. And that solution was to find new sources of gold, to find new items and sell, and to find new routes to Asia that would remove the Ottomans and the Italians. Driven by this economic motivation, the leaders of Portugal financed the development of maritime technology to sponsor maritime exploration of the west coast of Africa. States and their governments were centrally involved in this exploration because they had the power to organize the financing for it. So, what I'm saying is this: the solution is, let's establish new trade routes to India, let's establish new things to trade for gold and silver, and let's literally find the gold that we know is in Africa, not through overland routes, which are controlled by the Ottomans and very expensive, but by developing maritime technology to be able to bypass them and find the sources. So they're going to solve the gold problem through this exploration. So what happens is the Portuguese, led by Prince Henry the Navigator, that Portuguese prince who financed innovation and early exploration, sent explorers down the coast of Africa. Their original goal was to be able to find the sources of African gold. But Bartholomew Diaz, shown by the red here, found that Africa has a bottom. And though he did not go all the way to India, returned to Portugal and told his friend Vasco da Gama, who established this new land route, or excuse me, maritime route to India. Da Gama's expedition brought back a 600% profit over investment, which showed the leaders not only of Portugal, but of Spain, France, and England that maritime exploration was the way to go. Now, the other things that these governments could do, and the reason why governments could be involved, is not only were they the ones that had the power to finance the ships, the explorers, but they also could recruit many of the second born sons of the wealthy to lead these expeditions. See, these second borns were governed by primogeniture laws, which were laws in Europe that provided that the eldest son of wealthy family inherits everything from land, wealth, and title. And the younger sons, the second born, third born, and so on, got nothing and had to find wealth on their own. Well, the governments could recruit these people, such as Diaz, such as Da Gama, and give them the opportunity to make their own wealth. The other thing is the leaders of Portugal and Spain could also negotiate with the Catholic Church and get them to partially finance these voyages in exchange for financing them. What the church got in return was essentially conversion to Catholicism. So, what we have here is they're solving the gold famine through exploration. And the exploration was designed to find gold and silver, solving the gold famine, in three ways. First of all, to find it. The original exploration of the west coast of Africa was to find sources of gold. That's what the top equation represents. Also, they could find new and interesting things to trade to bring gold and silver in. The Portuguese became the first traders of African slaves, and they made a lot of money off them, though that was very bad. And the last thing, when Da Gama reached India and returned, they also got gold and silver through controlling trade with Asia. So, to solve the gold problem, the monarch sponsored exploration to find gold, to find things they could sell for gold, and control trade to get gold. So, eventually, what happens is as Spain gets involved, France gets involved, Great Britain gets involved, and later the Dutch Republic gets involved, we create this global network of trade. But it all was designed to help these new European monarchs create their market economies, legitimize their governments, centralize through a professional bureaucracy and a professional army, and to become powerful in Europe because they had lots of gold and silver. So the key takeaways from this part. One, internal and external factors motivated the leaders of European nation states to establish and expand maritime empires. The need for wealth in the form of precious metals was needed by these rulers to legitimize and consolidate their power, create a market economy, and to make their state powerful among European states. Remember that European nation states were brand freaking new. Okay. Number two, the existing pattern of trade that went through Constantinople and later Istanbul when the Ottomans took it over could not provide the wealth needed to legitimize their rule, centralize their power, and create a market economy. So European monarchs finance exploration to find new sources of gold, new items to sell, and new routes to Asia. The governments did this. They were centrally involved because they had the power to organize the financing for it. They could get the boats, the sailors. They could recruit second-borns who were governed by primogeniture laws to take part of it. and negotiate with the Catholic Church to be able to convert. And finally, this led to the creation of maritime empires. So in future videos, we're going to take a look at the main effect of this, essentially the creation of maritime empires, which is going to take place in two waves. From 1450 to 1600, the Spanish and the Portuguese built their maritime empire in the eastern and the western hemisphere. And from 1600 to 1750, the French, the Dutch, and the English built theirs across the world.